Good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Meltzer. This is Office Hours, episode 806 or so, as we say, because Gigi, although she sounds like Count Dracula, she hasn't been able to count over all these years. And so I think she's miscounted and missed some of our shows because forgot to put Office Hours on there. This is Office Hours, the OG, the soul of business, created by Blaine Bartlett, my mentor. And we've brought on a stray child over the years. No, it's not Ulysses S. Grant. It's not Santa Claus. It's Rhett Power, my powerful co-host and friend. Be the power that is within Rhett Power. Thank you both, Blaine Bartlett and Rhett Power, for joining me.
Happy to be here, always.
All right, I warned them. I'm fired up today. Life has not ever been better than it is today. I am so blessed, and so are my friends, and so is Kareem Kafri, who is here with us today on Office Hours, episode 806. Welcome to Office Hours, Kareem.
Thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it. Thank you again.
We love it. Welcome. You're a New Yorker, so you can handle it. CEO at the Atlas Network. And look, we need you on the show because some of the most prominent questions as I'm coaching executives and entrepreneurs and billionaires is the problem with supply chain and tariffs. In relative to being a great leader, having that type of expertise. There's a lot of people with misinformation, just like there is in every other subject matter topic or expertise. I would love to know exactly your opinion of the tariffs in general. Are there any positive aspects to the tariffs? Because so far I'm having a difficult time finding anyone besides one person that really feels that tariffs are a positive thing.
Well, we have to go back and understand why tariffs are put in place. And obviously they've been put in place for economic reasons. We have a pretty large trade deficit globally. And this has been a way for the US economy and specifically the government to be able to recoup back a significant amount of capital. However, at whose cost? Who's really paying for this? And this is where the misinformation, I think, really has come about through time, where it's really been the American consumer who has had to front or deal with these costs. Now, the tariffs are what they are, and they continue to change on a daily, weekly, monthly basis at breakneck speed that no one can even be able to understand how to navigate them. So what do we really kind of have to take away from this? And I'm a supply chain optimist. And so what that means is that we're consistently looking for the silver lining that in the end allows consumers to get what they need, when they need it, and in the timeframes they need it to be done. And so in this time where there's these complexities, you have to try to look for the opportunities in chaos. So what are we talking about? We're talking about businesses being able to try to negotiate more favorable terms and conditions with their suppliers. We're talking about cost and where companies are looking at the way that they produce their widgets for maybe many decades, and now we're looking to use new materials or alternative methods to reduce their cost infrastructure, maybe even make the product better because boxers do their best work when they're in the corner, right? And then really the final stage, which is alternative supply chains. Are there places in the world where certain things can be made better, cheaper, faster, and with more, power and capabilities behind it? And so these are the ways that we have to look at, industry to industry, product to product. It makes sense for some, doesn't make sense for others. Some companies may say, I'm going to shift away because I'm trying to save $1 and end up causing themselves $4 in headaches. That can absolutely happen because if the materials aren't there, the output, the resources, the technology, or finally the costs, you end up really digging yourself a pretty deep hole just because you try to have a short-term solution where it may have been better for you to just figure out how to deal with the cost increases. So it's a complicated time. Yes, you're right. It's difficult to see why we're in this place because we as consumers don't want to feel that in our pockets, especially around the holiday time. You've got, Christmas coming here and holiday season. You've got, obviously, Thanksgiving. Costs on things like vegetables are through the roof. and other materials, heavy metals, and products that materials that go into products that we buy every single day. And so it is a challenge. It's a real complicated time these days.
Well, it's nice for Blaine living on Social Security that he doesn't like broccoli, and so he doesn't have to worry about the vegetable costs at least. Blaine, go ahead.
Historically, tariffs have never worked long term, and they are intended to be utilized in terms of my economic upbringing from in a scalpel approach rather than a chainsaw approach. And
Correct.
what we're experiencing today, in my experience, is this chainsaw run amok, where there's no rhyme or reason to some of the things. I mean, you look at some of the ways that these tariffs were actually calculated, particularly back at the beginning, and it's like, what the hell are you talking about? So the idea of using tariffs to facilitate, they're protectionistic is what they are, for, domestic
keeping
service.
others out.
Yeah, keeping others out. It seems to me that the targeting is more punitive than it is generative. And the consequence of that is a considerable amount of confusion in the supply chain environment. As a consumer, whether I'm a consumer with a C or a consumer with a B, I'm buying product to sell. How do I smooth the waters a little bit? Because I know as a business owner, I hate ambiguity. Now I deal with it all the time, but artificial ambiguity just for the sake of roiling the waters just doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. So where do I go to get some idea of foundation that I could work with?
As a business or as a consumer?
Yes.
Which one? Both?
No.
Good answer.
Well, let's just take the business. True supply chain conversation here. I'm trying to bring product in, resources in, that sort of thing. Cool.
Right. So you have to take advantage of the respites for sure. So when you have these 90-day pauses, businesses that have been in business for a long period of time have to say, how do we essentially front load inventory, knowing that inventory can still kill businesses? But if you've been in the business for selling X widget for 20 or 30 years and you've got the market and you've got this 3-month window where tariffs are at bay, take advantage of it. You basically may not buy for the quarter, you buy for 2 or 3 quarters. You may take advantage of, again, as I said before, opportunities to really negotiate with your suppliers and work on cash flow conditions to say, all right, listen, we may have had a scenario in the past where we paid you a certain deposit, brought in goods, paid tariffs, and then paid you a remainder deposit. How about now we pay you a lesser deposit, bring in the goods, front load these tariffs, and then you let us have an additional 3 months or 6 months to pay these goods off, so we can essentially be able to kick the can down the road and not necessarily have to fire people or really upset the apple cart, because of the fact that we're playing sort of a cash flow game and we're front loading these tariffs. Or honestly, have some level of an absorption vehicle, because the supply chain has many different links to it, right? You've got the suppliers, you've got the logistics providers, you've got the warehouses and the fulfillment and so on. So instead of saying, here's this big tariff, we as a business have to take it on and pass it off to our customer, which ultimately will lead to them not buying anymore, breaking down the entire supply chain and so forth. Let's take this tariff, let's split it up 3, 4, 5 ways as equitably as possible. Everyone makes a little bit less in an interim period of time, but we still keep the most important actor in the entire supply chain, the consumer, happy. We reduce attrition rates, and we essentially have a scenario where business continues. So, I mean, these are the ways that you really, as a business, have to navigate it. And it's no different. I mean, in my book, Supply Chain Ups and Downs, which is behind me, shameless plug, I mean, I literally talk about the fact that we have the controllable factors and the uncontrollable factors. Today, it's tariffs. It may have been a pandemic. It may be a strike at the port. It may be a hurricane, whatever it may be. The point being is that in global supply chain, to truly be disruption proof, you must be nimble. You must be agile. You must be able to take advantages in the global economy in the moments that you can. And you have to always save for a rainy day, assuming that, the best sort of methodology about this is to be negative with a positive intention. This is very important in global supply chain to be risk averse and be risk mitigative in your processes. You have to assume that you may not have products for 6 months. You have to assume that your cost structure may increase by 50% or 70% or whatever it may be. And as such, will you still be able to be in business? And if not, what are your fail safes? What alternatives do you actually have in place, whether it be other suppliers to work with, as I mentioned before, absorption, deferral, terms and conditions, cost engineering, or alternative supply chains. These are 5 ways that industry to industry, product to product could be mitigation strategies. And it really just depends on the business.
And reach behind you, Kareem, reach behind you for your book. For whatever reason, my team only have the notes with you and Damon John as a trusted advisor and co-author with him. Is it possible to grab your book behind you? The show is seen at the airports and hotel rooms, which we have found people buy books in. So supply chain ups and down available everywhere, I assume. And so go ahead, grab it. If you can think of a more poignant topic as a business person or as a consumer that you want to learn about, you might as well learn about the expert himself, a trusted advisor to so many of my friends, as well as with Accenture, SEC, FINRA, and the list goes on and on. If you want true facts and true opinions and theories, philosophies about supply chain and how it affects our leadership, check out our friend Kareem Kaffouri. Thank you so much for joining us. We will have you back, I guarantee you. And I know my boys want you on their shows as well. Thank you so much.
Be an honor. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, moving right along as we do on Office Hours, episode 806 or so. Christian is in the house. He is waiting patiently in the green room. Christian, my team's on top of it today. Co-founder of Autograph, one of actually great company. Christian and I have talked previously about Autograph. Welcome to Office Hours, my friend.
Thanks, David. Great to be here. Good to meet you guys.
So, Christian, there's a whole bunch of companies, especially with AI now, that are able to help people preserve their legacy. And there was a gentleman that I know Blaine and I knew, Lee Brower, that was in the movie The Secret, that had the Empowered Wealth system, and he interviewed John Wooden for like 52 hours. And it was very antiquated, the way that we could capture a legacy so that our children could learn what was important to us personally, experientially, financially, and philanthropically. And these were the quadrant systems that Lee Brower had developed. And some of it foundationally is something that I've utilized in foundational principles of knowing what we want in life. Autograph now has a much greater system to capture the moments in memories that matter most, to create this legacy that people are looking for. What exactly is Autograph doing with AI to make it so easy for people to capture their legacies?
We do a bunch of things. The easiest one is we call you on your phone and ask you the big life questions. So you don't even have to get inspired to know where to start.
And a lot of these people are old, so they need a simple way, right? They can't just...
Yeah, like even the concept of installing an app and then putting a credit card in and signing and confirming through email, we don't need to do any of that. This is literally a text they get on their phone when somebody gifts them the subscription, and they're off to the races. They can text Walter, our interviewer, as he were a normal human being, and Walter guides you through your life, and it's quite a tour down memory lane. And not only that, so the future feature that we want to build is, as the future generations are sharing their stories with Walter, Walter can bring forth context from the past to say, hey, what you're telling me now reminds me of something that your grandpa went through, or reminds me of something that your dad went through. Would you like to talk to him for 15 minutes? And even if those folks aren't around anymore, you would be able to learn from the story of the move to New York, or the story from the story of starting a business, and it's the emotional infrastructure for all the other kinds of transfer that we do, financial, values, all that kind of stuff. We really want to enshrine these narratives that got us where we are, so that the future can make better decisions.
Nice. Rhett, what do you got for us?
I'm just curious. I'd love to hear a story or two of of people using it that just that sort of tugs at your heartstrings, or
Oh
that
man.
really, I mean, that
There are so many, right? I could tell you a couple from even from the beginning, the very early days.
yeah, yeah.
Parents of autistic kids, So this is one particular person who has an autistic son, and there's a history of heart issues in his family. So he has all kinds of existential anxiety around who's going to be there for his kid, if something were to go down. So he's using this as a platform to encode all of his values so that his kid can have a resource, if he were to not be around, We have cases of estranged parents who are not in contact with their kids because life put them in very difficult situations, and this is almost a Hail Mary for them, In the case that at some point they find me and want to learn about me, this is my side of the story. Um, there's cases of folks recovering from brain injuries or neurological diseases that have a hard time expressing themselves. And Walter is a friendly, impartial, non-judgmental being that just is patient and kind and, helps walk them through memories,
I tried to
Um,
get my cousin had cancer a few years ago, and that's why I asked that question, because and he had two young girls in middle school, and I really, as I sat with him week after week, I tried to get him. I wanted him to tell some stories. I wanted him to
mhm.
record them or do something, and I wish this had been around. So this is fantastic, because I think those girls would have really loved to hear from their dad when they graduate from high school, or that first day of college, or that,
Exactly.
those moments that
Walking
he
down the
wasn't going to,
aisle.
yeah, those moments that he wasn't going to get to see. And I just can't imagine hearing his voice, like 10 years later
Yeah.
but anyway, sorry,
No, it's
it's
mighty stuff. I
fascinating.
mean, honestly, the thing that was most surprising about the company was just how immediately the emotional domain of this became so heightened. Like we meet folks at the peaks and valleys of life, whether it be like a big milestone birthday or when they get bad news from the doctor. And of a privilege for us to be in a position where we have the opposite of buyer's remorse, right? Like there's very little downside in sharing your story and, making it accessible to the ones that you love, but the converse of that is all that we forget.
Nice.
Yeah.
And Blaine, unmute yourself, my brother. Yes, unmute yourself, please. Blaine, you should maybe get a text message from Christian and we'll help you out.
Got it. We got it. I'm going to piggyback on what Rhett was just talking about here. I remember when my dad was dying. I would drive down. I live up in Seattle. I would drive down to Portland about every 2 weeks or so, and we would sit out on his porch. And rather than saying goodbye, what I asked him to do was, and I told him I was going to do this. When I would get there, I'd say, "Dad, I want you to tell me something about you that I've never heard before. Tell me something about your and Mom's life that I never knew before." Now, we never recorded it. It was just he and I sitting down with a glass of bourbon, and because he liked bourbon, that's
Mhm.
yeah. But we would just riff. Now, my question to you, then, Christian, is: can your AI biographer Walter can he field a conversation that two people are having, and then actually interact with two people and ask questions of the two based on the conversation that's unfolding?
Not yet, but it's something we're actively building. So we don't want to override those kinds of moments that are the real those that's the stuff of life. Um, there are some challenges with how to like it's surprisingly difficult to figure out when to make a turn in a conversation. It's easier when it's like two people, like it's my turn or your turn. But when it's four of us and like you have to figure out who's going to make the joke and when to interrupt and when not to interrupt. Um, so we're working pretty hard to make sure that AI can be a positive contributor to a conversation. In the meantime, what we can do really easily is just have a conference call where Walter listens in, and just records that interaction, right? Because it is important to distinguish, like the way your dad talks to you is probably slightly different than the way he talks to one of your siblings, right? Just even subtle different ways. But to make this as personalized an experience as we can, then we really want that dynamic to be captured too. So it's something that we're actively thinking about. How do we have Walter be more present and capturing the dynamics that happen naturally, not just a more like sit down, let's talk about your life kind of setup. Um, but you
So
bring up
that
a great you bring up a great point, Blaine, that some of these questions don't come up organically, right? It's not the kind of question that you ask on a normal Tuesday. What do you think about regret, or what do you think about what does heartbreak mean to you, or failure? Um, so the one nice thing that we do is we front load all that. So we get to ask the questions that you hope you would have asked, and even if you realize that you should be asking, it's still pretty hard to, have the emotional space to ask those deep kind of questions, right? Like there's all the layers of the roles that we play for each other in society that, or definitely in family, that make this a more challenging thing. And that's just even getting the story, right? And then organizing it and, like editing it and making sure that other folks can see it. It's a whole different ballgame. It's kind of crazy to think about how many years we've gone by without a solution destined to this exact problem.
Yeah, Lee Brower would be proud, that's for sure. And
You would.
we ask the right questions. We are able and capable of preserving not only the words, but the space between the words, the laughter and the emotions that we lose, even in the Lee Brower quadrant system that he created. Thank goodness for technology that allows us to not only prompt and have a host of synthesized questions that are thoughtful in their nature, but the preservation of what comes after a thoughtful question is a true value. As the CEO and co-founder at Autograph, my friend Christian Bernardus, thank you so much for joining us. We will have you back, I guarantee it. Check out autograph-ai.com, autograph-ai.com. Preserve your legacy in a very unique and powerful and valuable way. We'll see you soon, Christian.
Great to be here, guys. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Take
Thanks,
care.
Griffin.
All right. He is the cleanup hitter here. He doesn't play for the Dodgers, but he's now playing for Office Hours episode 806, clinical psychologist and author of his new book that came out this summer, Blind Spotting: How to See What's Holding You Back as a Leader, something you two deal with all the time and help me with all the time, figuring out what I'm doing to interfere with my potential. Marty Dubin is in the house. Welcome, Marty.
Thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
We are as well. You have two people that are well versed in this area, so I'm curious the questions they're going to ask. So I'll start up just simply with a layup. Is there one common denominator that holds back leaders?
Well, I think, coming from where I sit, I think it is self-awareness or a lack thereof. Most of my work is with very accomplished senior leaders, and they're on target 90% of the time, but there's that 10% when they're just doing who they normally are, their default personality, and it isn't working. Situations are different, things change, and if they're not self-aware enough to be able to catch it and pivot, and then they just keep on making the same mistake, and they usually don't think it's them. They think it's a situation or somebody else. And so, yeah, self-awareness is the most important tool.
It's interesting that you identify that, Marty, and I couldn't agree with you more. Daniel Goleman's whole platform around emotional intelligence has awareness, self-awareness in particular, being the cornerstone of that entire epistemology. In the work that I've done, and I'm going to ascribe this also to Surrett, I know that you've done this as well, the blind spots. Our friend Bob Proctor used to talk about, and he would share a little metaphor. He'd be asking somebody, well, why did you do that? You knew better than that, right? And they'll go, yeah, I know. Then why did you do it? I don't know. I just did it. These blind spots, they're out of sight, out of mind. That's why they're called a blind spot. Are you, in the 6 types that you identify in the book, you've been able to actually, kind of chunk them down. Is there one of the 6 types of blind spots that seems to be more common than others?
I don't think so. I mean, we're all complex, and I have, as you say, chunked them out to create a taxonomy. I mean, that's how science proceeds, right? You describe and you categorize and you explain. And most of coaching, I think, is just kind of a hot mess. I mean, conversations just go all over the place, and you can always be helpful because there's a lot to talk about and you're talking to smart people. But trying to kind of narrow down, like just to your point about not knowing what you should know about yourself, that's what these 6 areas try to do. I mean, they're common terms, they're not psychobabble, and it's just trying to get a handle on it. Maybe the easiest one to recognize is our strengths and when they're overused. And just think about what your common strengths are. What are your real big strengths that you think, contribute to your success? You're hardworking, you're empathetic, organized, and then just put the qualifier TOO in front of it. What happens when you're too organized, when you're too creative, when you're too charismatic? No matter what it is, those are the times, I think. So often that's a quick one for people to be able to get a hold of.
Yeah, that's fascinating, Martin. I'd love to get your take about self-talk. How much does our own internal dialogue get in our way, and in the work that you've done? And have you seen an impact of a leader's self-talk? And I'd love to get your sort of thoughts there.
That's just such a great question, because I'm actually kind of encouraging people to do more self-talk, right? I mean, become more self-aware. So you're out, and maybe that's a bottom line in my book, everything taken to an extreme is a problem, even good things, right? There is too much chocolate in the world sometimes. So yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So I guess the point is, it all, work is about performance and it's about behavior. So if your behavior, even your self-talk behavior, is getting in your way of your performance and you're getting feedback about it, things aren't working or people are telling you that, maybe that's the cue that, you need to act maybe the other way, a little more on the impulse, and stop trying to kind of correct yourself and censor yourself all the time. But I think the direction usually is the other way. People just are not that self-aware. They're not doing the self-talk enough. That's the problem I tend to see.
I love the way that in your book you not only provide the framework, but show different types of blind spot, but also give some insight in some real coaching sessions with relatable people and leaders to take us through the process and learn about the blind spots and make it more common and also more relatable than a lot of people. And if anybody wants to understand where their blind spots are, there's no better book out there than Blind Spotting: How to See What's Holding You Back. Not just as a leader, as a parent, as a coach, as a mentor, as a teacher. We all have blind spots. Some of us more than others use Martin or Marty Dubin's approach. He gives a great framework for us all. Available everywhere, Blind Spotting. Thank you, Marty, for joining us. We'll have you back as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Blaine's got his girlfriend calling him. Welcome back as well. We are time for the takeaways. Maybe you can get our takeaway for the day. We'll start with Blaine Bartlett. Moving possibilities into reality. Blaine Bartlett, what's your takeaway of the day?
One word: awareness. Yeah, awareness opens up the door to all kinds of choices that I hadn't noticed before, whether it's blind spots, whether it's conversations that I haven't had that I'd love to be able to, posteriorize, or whether it's something in a supply chain. Becoming more aware of just what are the pieces there that I can actually begin to, work with. So I think awareness is a magic word today.
I love it. Very good. And Ulysses S. Grant, what do you think?
My word of the day is cool.
Cool.
Cool. It was just cool, man. Those are some cool. I love that idea of like AI helping you tell your story. I love that. So much. I just freaking love that.
It is the pauses, the laughter, the emotions, the words all allow us to capture who and what maybe preceded us to give a different meaning to our past. I love that as well. My takeaway is preparation for adjustment in all the aspects, starting with the tariffs. I really didn't, I thought the best question Blaine had, which was like, how do we calm the storm? Because it is creating a bunch of interference, and, being able to prepare for adjustments and think outside the box on how, number one, am I able to stay in business? And two, changing the circumstances of the meaning of it. And then obviously with Autograph, we're utilizing, the adjustments that occur in life and preparing for it by studying what's most important, human nature, especially if we're given some insight onto our genetic and energetic inheritance as well. And then blind spots obviously allow us to prepare for adjustments. So preparing for adjustments, my takeaway of the day, always full of love, even when I'm ornery on a Thursday, thankful Thursday with my two best friends, Blaine Bartlett and Rhett Power, Powerful Insight Experience. We've all three paid the dummy tax. And yes, we are all three middle-aged white men. As unpopular as that is, I'm sticking to it on Thursdays. Somebody has to stick up for us. I do a lot, as Blaine knows, and we're dedicated to unstoppable women in the world. I have a fun for them. But Thursdays, I'm thankful for middle-aged white men. Thank you, you middle-aged white men, for joining me on Office Hours episode 806. Thank you.
Absolutely. See you next Thursday.
We'll see you next Thursday. Or before, be warned.
Or before.
I might call you before. I'll see you guys in New York. Thank you. All right, everybody. That's episode 806 or so. Thank goodness Gigi's here to laugh at our jokes because nobody else is. Appreciate you, Gigi. It's because she doesn't know English. We are going to be in Los Alamitos filming Go Fund Yourself, the #1 show on Cheddar. We'll be in New York City with hopefully Blaine and Rhett. Then I'll be off to Jacksonville, Florida, back to New York City, back to Rhode Island, then Columbus, Ed Milet, me, Gary Vee, hanging out with the Aspire Business Tour. If anyone wants in my community to join me, I will host you in Columbus and get you a ticket to Ed Milet, Gary Vee, and me, Eddie Wilson, Andy Cordo, there at Aspire Business Tour. Just reach out to me, david@dmeltzer.com. Please remember, most importantly, be more interested than interesting. Be kind to your future self and do good deeds. Hit it, Gigi.